Welcome, everyone, to Just Talking About Jesus. I'm your host, Jan Johnson. Glad you're joining us, and I hope that by the end of this show, you feel encouraged and strengthened. And if so, please like and subscribe. I especially want to thank all the new viewers and listeners. Have you ever faced a moment when doing what's right comes with a cost? What does it look like to walk faithfully with Jesus your whole life? Today, author Teresa Abel Haynes joins us to share her testimony, her love for the Lord, and the incredible story of a man who chose truth over comfort, even when the cost was his life. This is a conversation about integrity, conviction, and God's unfailing faithfulness. Teresa Abel Haynes is a journalist and historical novel dedicated to bringing hope through inspiring stories. She is the author of The Queen's Priest, the story of Blessed Thomas Abell. Teresa holds a master's degree in the religious roots of Europe from Lund University in Sweden and a bachelor's degree in journalism. She spent nearly 2 decades homeschooling her children and now contributes to Christian news publications. She blends her love of history with the art of storytelling. She lives in the Pacific Northwest with her husband Kip of 30 years. She enjoys reading good books, hiking, raising chickens, and when it's not raining too much, which it is right now, exploring new places. Let's welcome Teresa. Sure. Tell us a little bit about your testimony. Where you been like a Christian all your life? You just like, or there was a defining moment, or?
Yeah, so my name is actually Teresa Abel Haynes. Abel is my maiden name.
Right.
And I grew up in a Christian family, a wonderful Christian family. My mom and dad both had a really strong relationship with the Lord, and they modeled that for us. And I always had a sense of a desire to know the Lord and to be with him. So even as a kid, I remember praying and just talking to Jesus and just imagining him right there. I remember going to school on the school bus, being a little bit lonely and just thinking, Jesus is sitting next to me. So I grew up with like, I think a real special relationship with the Lord. I think I was probably about 4 or 5 when I asked Jesus into my heart. And I was about 7 when I was baptized. And I didn't really have a time of walking away from the Lord specifically. I went on a mission trip when I was in high school with a group called Teen Mania. We went to South America. And it was during that time that I really had the experience of spending time with the Lord every morning. So we would get up every morning and all the kids would go with their Bible and their journal and spend maybe a half an hour with the Lord. And then we'd get together and pray. And I think that that period of time was really formational for me in terms of understanding that practice of walking with the Lord. So that was really great. And then my husband and I met when we were actually teenagers, and we got married when I was 18 and he was 20. And so I think that we've always been partners for each other spiritually, just encouraging. And, there's definitely been seasons that were more difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And I think especially in my late 30s, I went through a season where I just really I really understood my need for the Lord in a new way. And I think that really brought me into a greater intimacy with the Lord and realizing that was what I wanted more than anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And it just, not everybody has like this dramatic thing this is like I was down in the pits and now I'm here and which are amazing testimonies, but it doesn't minimize your experience, you know. Everybody is drawn to God in their own special way and whatever, and it doesn't mean that you've never had any little bumps in the road.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure.
You're right, because it's the bumps that kind of bring you to a closeness. That's not a word. Closeness.
Yes, a greater intimacy.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And
And I think,
humility.
yeah, and it just brings you into when you understand him more, you see him more into where he is drawing you closer and realizing where he's more faithful and that those promises that he have
Mm-hmm.
really are for you as an individual.
Oh, yeah. I think, especially as my kids were entering their teenage years, just really remembering how to pray, just remembering oh, I need to be fighting like we're in a battle, because we are, not with my kids, but with the spiritual forces around us. And I think, that was probably a time when I really started growing in that area of my life, especially.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So you wrote a book.
Yes, I
You
did.
you wanted to delve into some of your name, your namesake, and how did that happen? How did that come about?
Yeah, so I grew up, as I said before, in Abell. My family were the Abels, and I knew that we had an ancestor who had carved his name and family emblem, which was like a bell symbol with an A in the middle, in the Tower of London. And in fact, when I was a kid in our apartment, we had a picture of this up on the wall. So I kind of grew up with this image, but I didn't really know very much about it. And so as I got older, I started researching. And about that time, things were starting to come online, like Wikipedia came online and things like that. And so research became a little bit easier. And more I learned about Thomas Abell, I realized that his story was just a journey of faith. And so I wanted to look more into it. And a couple years, I guess more than a couple years ago, about 3 years ago, I started really doing some research. I decided I wanted to write the story. And I was really motivated about trying to understand who Thomas Abell was and why he did what he did.
Mm.
And that was kind of the beginning of that journey.
So as you were doing it, I mean, you had to decide where, yeah, like what avenue you wanted to go to. Like as I've read the book, it's really a story of integrity.
Mm-hmm. It is. It really is. And I think the more that I looked into it, the more relevant it felt for today. And I thought, there are people all over the world who are in a situation where they're having to choose between standing up for their faith and living a comfortable life. And that was actually what he was facing as well. And so as I began to write the story, I felt like the Lord was putting it on my heart to write it, because I think this generation needs more heroes like that to look up to, more people to say, hey, this is somebody who is faithful.
Right.
So
And so this was at the time with King Henry the
King
third,
Henry VIII,
eighth,
King
the
Henry
eighth,
VIII.
Henry
Yes.
the eighth, and who also had one wife after another.
Yeah. So the history on this is King Henry VIII was the King of England, and he did not have an heir, and he was concerned that if he died without an heir, that uh, who knows who would be the next king, and there could be a civil war. And that was actually a realistic fear, because his own father had come to power after a long period of civil war, and so he wanted to avoid that. But he also was motivated by wanting to be married to his mistress. And so there was that. And so he set out to divorce his wife, Catherine of Aragon, whom he had been married to for almost 20 years. And the way he went about doing it was trying to use scripture to prove that his marriage to her should never have been. And that's where Thomas Abell really came in, because Thomas was asked to basically defend, well, he was asked to approve of what the king was wanting to say, and he stood against that. But perhaps I've kind of walked into the story backwards. I haven't really mentioned who Thomas Abell was at all.
Yeah, yeah, because at one point he became the Queen's priest, right?
That's right.
Queen Catherine's priest.
Yeah. So the name of the book is The Queen's Priest, and it is the story of his life and that part of his life. But he started out as a tutor in Oxford, and we think that he came into the royal household as the Queen's priest because the king wanted to replace the Queen's staff with English priests that he could maybe lean on to influence the king and influence the queen and have her agree to do what the king wanted her to do, which was um, repudiate their marriage and go to a nunnery and get out of the way, basically.
Right,
So,
right. Which she didn't feel like she needed to have to do.
no, she felt like since the time she was a child, she'd been told that she was intended to be the Queen of England. She was betrothed originally to King Henry VIII's older brother, and they were married when Queen Catherine and Arthur were like 14, 15 years old. And
Mere
it didn't,
kids.
Yes, they were kids, and that was not uncommon in that time period. But the marriage itself didn't last very long. He was mysteriously ill and died within a few months of their marriage. And she claimed that they had never even consummated the marriage. And so the plans were made for her to marry Arthur's younger brother, which was Henry VIII. But this sort of was in limbo for about 8 years.
Mm.
I don't even know if I went into this part of the history in the book, but this is the history. And so she waited, and then when King Henry VIII became king, the first thing he did was say, "I want to marry Catherine." And it seems that they really were in love with each other, from different historical record. And they were, like I said, they were married for almost 20 years.
Which is a long period of time for
It is.
considering who he
Yes.
was.
Yeah. And she had had 6 children, actually, and only one of them had survived, which is her daughter, Mary.
Mhm.
So,
And so then at that point, well, it was Cromwell that was her priest prior to that, right?
no,
Or
Thomas Cromwell
Cromwell
comes in a little
was
bit later. You might be thinking of Cardinal Wolsey,
right,
Cardinal Thomas Wolsey.
right.
Yes. So
Yeah.
he was sort of the head honcho, and he was called sort of like second only to the king because he basically controlled the powers of the state and the church. He was officially a cardinal in the Roman Catholic Church.
Because they
So,
were pretty, politically involved, the church
mhm.
was.
That's right. Yeah. So I like to think of it as the EU is today. The EU is kind of like we have separate states in Europe, but the EU kind of has a little bit of power over things to kind of make sure that they don't go to war with each other. The Roman Catholic Church had sort of a similar role, I think, in what was then called Christendom, which we today call Europe.
Right, right. And remind us what year that was.
So we're talking, yeah, the late 1520s. So this is also not that long after Martin Luther. And so there was probably a bit of anxiety about all that happening in Europe as well. So that many of the countries around Germany were leaving the Catholic Church at this time. And this is where King Henry saw his opportunity to set himself up as the head of the Church in England so he could make his own rules.
And so prior to that was King Henry. Was he Catholic to begin with?
Yes, he was Catholic, and he was actually called at one point the defender of the faith
Mm.
because he seemed to have been very devout in his religion, and he seemed very sincere. Actually, he wrote hymns, but at some point he began to make decisions, and it seems that his heart slowly turned away from the Lord as well as from the church in general. And one of the things I kind of wanted to do with the story was show two opposite trajectories. You have Thomas Abell deciding, I will follow the Lord no matter what it costs me. At the same time, King Henry VIII is saying, I will do what I want to do no matter what it costs me.
Right, right. Self, serving self
Yeah.
at that
Mhm.
point. So what was the crucial scripture area that was defining there that Henry wanted to do?
Sure. Yeah. So when I started looking into Thomas's life, I think the question I wondered was why did he do what he did? Like, what was it that motivated him? And so I was given the opportunity to go to London, and I went to the Tower of London and I saw where Thomas had carved his name and family emblem into the Tower of London, which was really an amazing experience to be in that room and think about what he went through. He was
Yeah.
actually incarcerated for 7 years, we think, alone during that time.
Mm.
And so, you have to wonder what that would have been like for him and what kept him going through the loneliness. And then I was able to go to the British Library, and Thomas Abell had written a book, which was really probably the thing that got him into trouble. The title of the book is great. It's Invicta Veritas, an answer that by no manner of law it may be lawful for the most noble king of England, King Henry VIII, to be divorced from the queen, his lawful and very wife, which is such a great title.
Maybe he could have had a shorter title and that could have been on the back of the book.
You would think.
A
So
blurb on the back of the book.
it was so much fun to find this book because there's, I think, two copies still in existence, and
Oh,
one of them is in the British Library. So I made an appointment with the librarian, went in, got to hold this book in my hands,
ooh.
and yeah, and the librarian said that someone had transcribed it. And he printed it out for me, and I took it home with me, which is what I have here right now. Actually, is like
Oh,
the
my
whole
word.
transcript, and it's hilarious because the English is creative spelling. Lyfe is life, and I don't know. It's really kind of, it took a while to decipher, but as I read through it, I realized that he was offended that King Henry VIII and the theologians of England and France and just different areas were basically saying that King Henry VIII's marriage was unlawful before God and because of Leviticus. But there's another verse in Deuteronomy where God had commanded the Jews to marry the wife of their dead brother and to produce an heir. And so his whole argument was, if God had told the Jews to do this in the law, then it cannot be against God's nature. It cannot be an evil thing. And so I know it gets really complicated.
Right.
You could tell that he was a lawyer as well. And it has this sort of legal repetitiveness as he's
Uh-huh.
building the case. But he was very impassioned about it. He called it blasphemy to say that what God had commanded was good was somehow evil. So,
Which is a valid argument. If
yeah,
you're just pulling out that. What was the scripture in Leviticus?
yes, I looked it up right before we got on this call to make sure I'd remember. So the verse in Leviticus comes from Leviticus 20, where it says, if a man marries his brother's wife, it is impurity. He has violated the intimacy that belongs to his brother, and they will be childless. And so King Henry VIII had said, that is why I'm childless, because I've married my brother's wife. And, you know,
And
it
yet,
was, it
at
was,
the same time, he's he's saying, "Well, this is
oh,
what I'm supposed to do."
yeah, he was terrible. He was really terrible. In fact, his second wife, he had actually had a relationship with her sister. And so he was very hypocritical in arguing this for sure. But I think what Thomas and other theologians and priests said about this verse in Leviticus is that clearly it was talking about marrying your living brother's wife. It wasn't talking about the widow of
Right.
your brother. So
Yeah, it makes a little bit of a difference, maybe.
yeah, this whole idea, if you have two scriptures that seem contradictory, one's in Leviticus, one's in Deuteronomy, if you read them together, there's a lot of wisdom that comes from that. And I think that, biblical scholars do that all the time. There's two things that sound like they could be contradictory. If you actually read them together, it makes a lot of sense and it kind of fills in the gaps of things.
Yeah, to be able to research. So, how long did it take you to do all this research?
I probably worked on the original research for about a year, and then I wrote the first draft, and then I couldn't stop doing research. I kept finding little details, and especially about the Tudor world. I started reading other novels, other historical accounts of things in Tudor life, and so I would sort of tuck little details in here and there. And so I wasn't really done doing research until I hit publish.
I know, and it's the kind of a rabbit hole, isn't
Oh,
it?
I love it. It's so much fun.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Yeah. So to wrap up your story, though, basically, um, well, I guess we won't tell the ending.
It's funny that I think I've had people ask me about the ending, and I thought that that would be obvious from the beginning. He's a martyr in the Catholic Church, and
Right,
so,
right.
you
So,
know, yeah, he is. But one of my goals in writing it was writing it in such a way that that was a victory and not just a tragedy,
Yeah.
you know? Because I think it is, of course, it's a victory when somebody is faithful their whole life and is willing to go to their death proclaiming Jesus on their lips. And so that was my goal in it.
Yeah. And I mean, did you wonder yourself at some point whether you could do that?
Oh yeah. I think there's always been that thought ever since I was a kid, you know. I think, you know, you look at church history and you realize people have faced this over and over again. And even right now, people all over the world are facing this. In fact, even in England today, there's a lot of oppression in terms of being able to have freedom of speech. I don't know if you're aware, but there have been a few cases where people have been arrested for praying in front of abortion clinics.
Hmm.
So there's definitely uh, yeah, there's it's not easy, I think, to stand up for your faith in certain areas of the world.
Well, and I don't think it's, it isn't always easy in a lot of places, whatever. I think part of it, I guess with Thomas, he knew that he knew that he knew that he was right. You know, he knew his relationship with God and he knew that what he was trying to do. And plus he loved Catherine as
Hmm.
a friend.
Hmm.
I mean, he dearly loved the woman as a friend and wanted to stand up for her like that too. So part of that made it helpful to be able to keep your stance.
Yes, there definitely seemed to be a strong sense of loyalty and also a sense of what I would even call social justice. Like
Hmm.
it didn't seem right to Thomas that this was happening to the Queen. And I think we know from history that a lot of people felt that way in England at that time, felt like it was not a just situation, but most people were afraid to speak up and say anything because they didn't want to be on the king's hit list either.
Right. And even still at that point, what could they do? You know,
That's true.
you
That's
could
true.
be against it and you had all the different classes of people and all of that kind of stuff. So
Mhm.
so the power was not in their hands.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think you did a fabulous job on it. It was just it was a great
Thank you.
a great moving story that I would recommend people read just because historically for one, but the way that you brought out your characters and your descriptions and all of the way it was all layered together is just beautiful.
Thank you.
So what's next?
I'm talking to the Lord about that right now. I really enjoy hearing my favorite kind of movies and favorite kind of stories are the true stories that maybe I wouldn't have known and really exploring the motivations of why people do the things that they do. And so I've been working on a story about another Christian hero of the faith in the 17th century. So
Okay. All right. In Europe again?
yes, this one's in France.
In
So
France. Okay. Oh,
during the
so
30 Years War.
I just might have to go to France, huh, to do
Yes, I know,
to
I know. I
research.
might have to do, yes, yes. I might have to justify another research trip.
Oh, would you say that this book was appropriate for teens or for just, adults as a
Yeah. No, I think it's appropriate for teens. I really enjoy Tudor fiction, but a lot of it can focus on sort of these sex scandals, and a lot of the books out there have things that I wouldn't feel comfortable giving to a teenager. And so one of my goals in this was to have it something that families could enjoy together. So it does, of course, there are adult themes in it, as that was something that was a big part of the plot, but it's a story about Thomas's faithfulness. And so there are no scenes that I think would be
yeah,
inappropriate.
yeah, yeah.
Even his death, I tried to focus more on his looking to the Lord rather than the pain or the goriness of it. So
Right. Yeah. I think it'd be a great homeschool book, you know.
oh, I would hope so. I actually homeschooled my kids for 17 years. And one of our favorite ways for learning about history was to read a historical fiction.
Mhm.
So I had that in mind as well as I was writing.
Yeah. So have your kids read your book?
They have, yeah. My daughter really enjoys audiobooks, so
uh,
she is listening to the audiobook right now.
which just came out.
Yes, it just came out a couple of weeks ago, and I had hired a narrator from the UK, and he does a beautiful job, just this rich British accent reading the story, and he does the Queen's voice, who has a Spanish accent well, and I was very pleased with his performance.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's good. Okay. Well, what would you like to leave our listeners with?
Just keep following the Lord. Just keep listening to his voice. Keep on persevering.
Do what's right.
Yeah, just yes. Yeah.
Hold on to what's
Walk,
right. Yeah,
yeah, walk with him and he'll show you what you need to do.
yeah. Thank you, Teresa. This has been really enlightening.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me on.